WWT presents Meet the Chief.
Welcome to another episode of Meet the Chief. My name is Tracy Sever. I'm head of global cybersecurity strategy here at Worldwide Technology, and I'm incredibly excited to have with us Carl Froggett here today. So Carl serves as a CIO at Deep Instinct. It's an extremely unique end-to-end deep learning cyber framework. It focuses on prevention, and an interesting, tidbit about the company is they actually leverage one of only 6 deep learning models in the world. Carl previously served as head of global infrastructure defense and CISO at one of the world's largest banks. So he comes to us with just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much, Carl.
No, thank you for having me here, Tracy. And hopefully I can bring my 27 years of experience, with cyber, specifically at the forefront of that. Very, very challenging times that we're all in.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting coming to the end of 2023. It has certainly been a wild ride. I know that we've seen volatility, much like we've never seen before. When we look at e-crime, nation state actors, just the trying to keep up with the regulations that are constantly, coming at all of our customers today. And then with the proliferation of AI, it's certainly changing the landscape.
Yeah, it's very challenging. To be fair, it's always has been. It's a constantly changing landscape. I think this year, especially with the 2 conflicts in the world right now, even more so, and certainly, with Russia, Ukraine, a lot of cyber warfare that to be honest is not really covered in the media as much as the on the ground, but it's definitely there, and very challenging. And then you throw into that generative AI, which for me has made a massive splash this year, right? I think everybody right at the start of the year, before I was attending conferences, there was a big splash with generative AI in ChatGPT, and that's really just opened everything up as well this year, Tracy.
Yeah, it certainly has. And I think many people kind of play both sides, just really understanding how do we look at AI as a risk, then how do we look at AI as an opportunity? And I think with what you guys are doing at Deep Instinct, you guys are really using it as a defensive measure. And I'd love to hear just like a little bit more about the levels of AI that you guys are leveraging, because I know it's a lot different than other things in the market.
Yes, I like to. It is an evolutionary AI, right? So if you think AI has been around since the 50s or 60s in various notations, and machine learning certainly is kind of where we are today from a mass market perspective. And deep learning is the next evolution, which is where Deep Instinct is. And the founders spent a few years trying to use existing frameworks and ended up having to build their own because they weren't good enough for threat. And so the whole culture of the company behind the products is prevention first, right? So pre-execution prevention, using deep learning, and it's a really good example of how generative AI is going to turn things on its head. So if you think today, with what we've been used to, signatures were kind of pattern matching, right? We're used to these patterns. Machine learning kind of approaches to a degree build on that. But machine learning on its own was never good enough, which is why we have the crowdsourcing of intelligence using the internet, which is why we have analytics going into the cloud. And deep learning and what we do at Deep Instinct doesn't require any of that and still has a better advocacy rate because of that deep learning framework that we build it on. So a very disruptive, generative AI. But I think generative AI is going to be disruptive across many different areas when it comes to security as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, and there's so many sides to the equation when it comes to generative AI. And I know, in the past when we've talked, we've really focused in on how does this impact the workforce in a positive way, because it's going to really change the way that the SOC is defending against things, reducing false positives. But can you talk a little bit about how the teams that are leveraging these new, very disruptive technologies are kind of paving the way for the future?
Yeah, so right now, I know really for the audience, want to highlight that we've started to see AI being used in the SOC, but more as a aid to a SOC analyst, right? So you're seeing companies essentially using AI to make sense of the vast amount of data quicker than what the SOC analyst can, right? Um, with generative AI, there's no real rules. You're not kind of building rules and flows like you may do in a SIM or a SAW platform, right? The generative AI is doing it for you, and then some of them are building the PowerPoint and the presentation that you need to give about the incident, right? Which arguably for me and my skills on PowerPoint would be the most useful part. But they're just aids, right? I really see generative AI really kind of automating, right, the entire thing from an attack happening, but even before an attack. So if you think about what you can do prior to attack, patching, vulnerabilities, configuration management. If you take the known exploits and the known vulnerabilities and put all that data together and let a generative AI loose on it, and remember, you're not having to give it rules, right? You're not having to do anything. It's doing it on its own, and it's coming up with the outcomes and the conclusions on its own. So you can take a vast amount of data. I mean, at my previous job, we had kind of 900,000 endpoints and 100,000 network devices and tens of millions of lines of firewall rule config, right? Proxy, right? So you take all of that data in, and now you can have a generative AI help you understand what you should change now to avoid an exploit or a vulnerability in the future. And we can't really do that today because of the scale of the data, and there is manual effort with the systems that are today. So that's been proactive, right? Clearly on the other side, we're already seeing it today, right? Bad actors are using generative AI to make their tools better. So you really need to up the game and fight AI with AI, but on the same levels, and making sure that you're using the right AI and at the right problem or feature set, right?
Yeah, that's it. I think that's really spot on, and it's leveraging it in the right ways to really help with the business outcomes. You're involved in so many conversations, especially coming from the seat that you were in, having to manage all of that yourself. Now you're on the other side of the table, really helping others navigate that. Are you seeing any trends come up that surprise you from other seats around the world?
What I'm seeing, and it's not quite AI related, if I'm honest, but what I'm seeing, being on the other side, and as my role as an advisor, here at Deep Instinct to our customers and prospective customers, is they're struggling to do the basics well, right? So just came from a client earlier this week, asset inventory, right? It's siloed. It's not that the technology doesn't exist, by the way. It's siloed technology. It's an organizational issue. It's politics. And these are like basic fundamentals when it comes to just being on the front foot of having a foundational kind of security kind of thing. And it surprises me today that companies still struggle with that. And then you combine that with, and this is every company, is the businesses that they're supporting are leveraging new technology, right? Be it container, be it cloud, be it mobile, be it SaaS, right? So we, as a CIO slash CISO, you've got this real complex nature of your attack surface, right? Your exploits, your vulnerabilities continues to increase. The bad actors are getting much better and using tools like generative AI, But at the same time, you have to adopt these newer technologies because that's where your business wants to go, and ultimately, provide a good customer experience or generate revenue or what the business outcome is. So, I'm kind of seeing CIO and CISO roles getting it from all sides, trying to enable this, but in a safe manner whilst managing, what I'll call legacy kind of environment, right? It's a real challenge.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's interesting, that you bring up keeping innovative technology really at the forefront, and even at some very large organizations. One of the key things that we see is that to retain talent, you really need to be leveraging innovative technology and giving those tools to the newer generation, so they stay passionate about the space. Have you guys seen that really coming up as a top priority for CIOs, and in your previous role, is that something you focused on?
Yeah, definitely on all counts. So I would say the SOC and CISO in general, and I'm sure Tracy, you've seen the articles about the number of roles and positions, and we just don't have the talent to fill it. Um, and then, yeah, you need to embrace the new technology. But what I would say here, from a talent perspective, is burnout is a kind of key thing here. More thinking the SOC and those operational teams. And this is maybe where I see generative AI kind of approach has been positive, because you can offload some of that burden of, to be honest, especially with what we have today, high false positive, chasing ghosts, right? So how can I put it? The job satisfaction when a SOC analyst has done some work for hours or days, and it turns out to be nothing of consequence, their morale drops, because they every single one that I've talked to, every single junior SOC analyst, senior SOC managers, they want to make a difference, right? That's why they're doing the job. They want to reduce the risk. They want to protect the firm. And so they get a high level of job dissatisfaction when, yes, they may have all the data, but it turns out to be false, right? Um, on the flip side, I think talent from a leadership perspective, and as you know, I've run large teams, you need a plan. So when I kind of hear about talent shortages, people kind of assume, Tracy, somebody like you and I, right? We're hopefully in high demand because of our experience and what we have. But as you're building a team, there are more junior roles. So over my leadership career, which has been long, and I didn't plan to get into leadership actually, which is a different story. But you need a plan. So I've attended high schools, I've attended colleges and universities, I've given guest lectures. I've obviously attended university career fairs, and right, and it's all about at that early stage, the company that you're working for getting that brand recognized. When I worked at a bank, the number of times after doing an event like that, the students had never considered IT in a bank or cyber in a bank, right? They considered tech companies. So you've really got to have that. And then when you secure the talent, having a really solid plan of they're going to do this role for a few months or a year, and then you're going to move them into different roles. Because if you just keep somebody in the same role because they're really good at it, eventually they're going to quit because they're going to be bored. They're not learning anything new. So talent management is a real skill in itself that needs a lot of time to be successful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's so important to have that next generation passionate, excited, and really see all of the different paths that they can take in this industry, because it's an incredible place to be. At WWT, we have actually a few different programs to bring in younger talent, or even people who are from other industries that are interested in coming over, because it's the diversity of skill sets and experience that I think really brings so much to the table and allow us to be really innovative. So For those listening, it might be interesting for you to check out the associate program if you know any young folks that are interested in getting into the field, or even not so young folks, people who are coming from outside the industry. And for those who are in kind of their final semesters of college, we have our internship program. And it's really neat because we give people an opportunity to explore both the technical elements. So if you want to go down an engineering path or sales, because you're the perfect example where you've really done so many different elements of cybersecurity. And really, when you bring it all into one toolkit, it just makes the whole experience more enriching, I think, for both your customers, clients, and peers.
No, absolutely, and for the younger ones who are listening, I think you're spot on, Tracy. You've got to try different things. I certainly didn't think I would be here today recording a podcast with you, all those years ago. And then for the leaders, it is about once you've got the talent, you've got to nurture the talent, right? It surprises me a lot how. Again, somebody kind of does something well, and they're left there, right, and not given an opportunity to meet. It's a classic one, and I know that there's a general line about employees leave bad managers, not companies, right? And in that element, it's about there's a need of the person. So it's going to sound a little bit corny, but you've got to manage the whole person, right? It's not just about getting the work done, right? You've got to manage the whole person and then the team, right, and fulfill the needs. And most of it's not always related to work, but if you do that, the work will get done. That's what I found in my career.
No, that's fantastic, and it's so valuable to talk to younger folks coming up too, because for me, when I'm giving them advice, it's like something that you can actually use at any point in your career. I always think of when I'm speaking to people who are, getting comfortable, maybe doing presentations. I always tell them, do things that make you extremely uncomfortable, because you're going to get to the point where you're about to either record something or present in front of a large audience, and you're not going to want to embarrass yourself. So you're going to level up, and you're going to get there. And I think it's just kind of like little nuggets like that are always helpful, as you're learning new things.
Yeah, and as managers of people, giving them the opportunity, and then one thing I always I verbalize this, right? I give them a safety net. I say, look, if you've got a person who's been doing a role and they're moving to a new role, I have the conversation with them. I'm going to give you a safety net. I expect you to make mistakes because you've not done this before, but it's fine, right? It's how you deal with the mistakes, right? But the mistakes are part of the learning process. But if you have that conversation with people, they feel more confident, and they'll be more transparent about coming to you for advice, and they'll be more transparent when they do make an error, so that you can handle it if it needs handling. And then you're giving them the opportunities, as you say, to do different things. And then sometimes as a manager, you need to push them along a little bit, right? Like, you are going to do that big public presentation, but we're going to do this first. We're going to practice it, right? This is what I mean about managing the whole, right? Not just focused on the day-to-day work tasks. If you manage the whole, those tasks will get done.
No, I love that. That's fantastic. I'd love to hear a little bit about your own journey. I know that you started out. Actually, you'll tell the story better. Let's hear it from you.
Well, for those who want to Google, my dad was a school teacher and brought home a Sinclair ZX80 computer, and I would have to go on Google myself and figure out the age, but I was pretty young when he brought it home, and I was just straight away enamored with it, right? Like it was just I was just fascinated by it, and I couldn't stop programming it. Funnily enough, that computer had no persistent storage, so every time you turned it off, you had to code things back in, right? That's how old I am. But that planted the seed, and I think I'm really fortunate, looking back, that I knew what I wanted to be, and I knew the area. I wanted to do something with IT, something with computers. And then over the years, took the opportunity. I worked in a little computer shop in the town that I grew up in the back, building computers, right? Back in the day when you had to build them yourselves. But doing that, you learn all the components of a computer, how it works, whatever. And then ultimately, at university, I took a gap year. It was a bit of a last minute decision, and I landed on my feet at a company called NCR, doing IT support with a fantastic manager there who just taught me a lot of things. But between that, I was also working in retail and other kind of jobs to fund myself through university. And that retail experience, Tracy, that gives you customer experience, right? There is nothing like being in person dealing with a customer with a complaint. And that has carried me through all the way to today, right? Those experiences. And then, like I say, NCR led to other companies, American Express, Tetley Walker Breweries, Costain Construction. And then ultimately, all of that experience led me to Solomon Brothers way back in 1994, which were trading and moved to London. But all of those jobs were IT, right? Help desk, network, infrastructure. And then during a project of in London of rebuilding the European headquarters, that's when I was given we needed some firewalls, and nobody knew what a firewall was, and it was given me to sort out and figure out, and that's how I got into cyber. And then very quickly from that, the CISO at the time left, which was my boss. And so for many months, I was leading the teams, and that's how I got into leadership. So what I would say is, not a charted path, a very varied different roles. But when the opportunities came up, I accepted them, and I moved all around the UK and Europe in pursuit of taking those opportunities. But it was a lot of fun at the same time, Tracy.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's you gather nuggets from every single one of those experiences that help you see such a broader picture. And then it's just so interesting, in your previous role, before coming over to Deep Instinct, you're managing all of the same problems through an evolution of time, but just at this absolute grand scale, but with such a sense of responsibility. And so that must have just been such an interesting place to be in, to have the responsibility of so many consumers, your internal, corporate. That's just it's a really unique position to be in. So I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of that experience for you as a person.
Yeah, look, every day was a learning opportunity. So I think one thing is around first being true to yourself, right? So I would always have the highest integrity, and work with the stakeholders, the business, whatever. Ultimately, you got to know what's the business objective, right? What are you trying to do? But then you have all sorts of conflict, especially in a big, large financial organization, because you have all different kind of everything from private banking and wealth management to credit cards and mortgages and low latency trading, and so you have all these kind of different stakeholders with competing priorities. But what I found is understanding, listening, understanding, and being able to make your point and get your point across. And this is an interesting one of, if you can't get your point across, then maybe you need to reword it in a way, because obviously as a cyber expert, I may be in the weeds, and somebody just needs a basic whatever. So turning that into what I would call the business outcome, right? Do they really care what I'm doing under the hood? They just want to know what the outcome is, right? So you've got to look at yourself all the time, and be willing to learn and accept, but equally know when to hold your ground, right? And not whatever. But it does bring together, again, looking back, is all those different roles I had. I know what it's like to be in the shoes of a developer, of a system administrator, of an electrician, funnily enough, right? I did data centers. I did all these different roles. So when I'm here in Vegas at a storage conference. Yeah, I understand what their challenge is day to day. I may have done it a few years ago, and it may be more complicated now. But fundamentally, things are usually pretty much the same. And being able to work through that it is something that requires experience. But then with that safety net, the number of roles and projects that I was put into that were massively, you've given something, I don't even know where to start, right? But the confidence was put into me and the team, and we were given a safety net. We were given the safety net of, getting, maybe not taking the right step at the right time. Um, but together you work through things. So yeah, quite a journey.
Well, it really is, and it is amazing to see. Like I can tell just through your storytelling of your experiences, how many amazing managers that you've had that have really kind of colored how you bring yourself to work every day and how you treat your team. So it's so great to see how that influence is just kind of a never ending circle. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking ahead, I mean, it's so exciting now that you're over at Deep Instinct and having your just breadth of technical expertise. I'd love to hear from you. Like, what excites you about Deep Instinct and about this space, even just looking ahead in the next 5 years?
So yeah, I never thought I would be at a company for 27 years like I was, and I get asked this all the time, and the way I would describe my decision was I wanted to try something different, something really different. Obviously, I'd had much success and a few failures along the way, but yeah, truly try something different. And part of my role for the last 15 or 20 years was working with startups and working with innovative companies, because in cyber, as you know, the threats continue to evolve, and the bigger companies can be slower, right? I'm not but can be slower to respond to the innovation that's needed, which is why we have this interest. I call it a great cycle in cyber of constant innovation from all over, predominantly Israel, London, California, I would say for cyber, but equally I've mentored some startups from really kind of all places of the world. And I love that constant innovation that we have. And unlike, to be honest, other areas of technology and maybe other industries too. But it makes it a challenge. And maybe coming back to that leadership perspective of mentoring with startups, which I did a lot. Our CEO here at Deep Instinct is Lane Bess, and I first met Lane and Palo Alto Networks back in, I think, 2006, 2007, when they were a startup, right? And in my previous role, we helped them all the way as a design partner, all the way through to IPO. And that's just one example of things that I've been involved in over my career. So I always enjoyed that element. And then at Deep Instinct, we had been testing them for, I think, around 3 years. And it's just a really revolutionary technology when it comes to threat prevention that we've just never had before in the industry. So combine the startup with an amazing, unique technology that's really going to disrupt the threat landscape, and then having somebody like Lane on as a CEO, it was an easy decision to make. And as people say, I joined the dark side, coming to the vendor side. And funnily enough, I always saw vendors as my partners. I could never be successful in my previous roles without vendors and partners, right? I wasn't building, all these kind of defenses and whatever. What we were really doing was working with vendors and partners to create an integrated ecosystem that worked for the bank, right? Yeah, fundamentally what they're, so I always treated vendors as partners because I knew I couldn't be successful without them. So now been on this side, bringing that experience from the customer side and helping Deep Instinct make others successful.
Yeah, that's I love that way of looking at it because it's, over the years sales has sometimes gotten a bad rap, and it's, when you're really in it and you're consulting and you're partnering with your whole ecosystem, whether it's your customers, your partners, the consultants, it really is like working on a project. We're all sitting at the table, we're putting our minds together, we're bouncing things off, and we're making something work. And I think that's really the fun part of our jobs. Um, in this role that you have, I'm sure it's pretty interesting because you're seeing so many different environments and so many different challenges, just depending on what vertical they're in. How has that experience been for you?
It's been great. It is amazing just meeting so many different companies at different stages, different sizes, different verticals. Obviously, my main career has been in finance, right? So, which is awesome, but it makes me realize how well finance is actually leading the way. Overall, I would say there is a significant amount of investment in innovation in finance, in things like CIS and the safe harbor, that are really leading the way, I feel, from other verticals. And finance have the time and the energy with regulators, right? Let's not forget the role of the regulators here. So, but that's what I'm finding is even bigger companies in different verticals, they're more reliant on vendors and partners, right? Because we're kind of circling back here, right? They've got a tech debt, they've got a tech stack. The investment's not necessarily there, to keep it current, to keep it up to date. They have a lot of legacy systems. They're out of support, right? And again, from a cyber perspective, that's not usually a good place to be. And then they're struggling with the talent and everything else, right? So it is fascinating, and my dad was a teacher, right? So I think there's an element in my DNA of sharing experiences, beyond what we do at Deep Instinct, right? That's my role as an advisor. I was on a call with another prospective client, not even a client, earlier this week, and we were talking about nothing to do with Deep Instinct. I was helping them with identity and a couple of things that they were struggling with and wanted to pick my experience with. But I'm really enjoying that variety. But it does just bring home how hard it is to get this right, and we have to get this right all the time, right? That's the old adage: the bad guy just needs to be right once, and we've got to be right 100% of the time, and it's a challenge.
It is, yep. And then with your experience, just managing the business elements of it, I'm sure just in this economic climate, it just adds so much more compounding complications to it because you need to keep innovating. And then there's this, requirement to reduce costs because, as you said, budgets might just be completely out. Support contracts may not actually be current. There's so much that goes into kind of keeping the ship upright and fortified.
Yep. And like I say, there's a general push, and again, I'm kind of seeing this in most of the verticals of there's an adaptation because especially in the consumer side, right, of different verticals, the rapid adoption of new technologies from mobile devices, which obviously continue pretty much every year to get refreshed, to the advancements in hardware, right, and chips, and then but making that but the business today runs on what I would call the legacy stuff, or what they would call the legacy stuff, even though probably 90% of their revenue is actually running right through that piece, they're not interested, right? Because the pace of the business is moving. And this is where I think the adoption of, more API driven, right, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, right? Yeah, that's where we have to go to be as agile as we're required, not only for the business strategy, but obviously for the cyber one as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that insight. And as we kind of close out our interview, anything that you can kind of share just based on your experience as we head into 24 and kind of some of the takeaways that you'd want to leave with our listeners, both in the partner community as well as your former peers on the client side, of what you're seeing and some of the things that they can do to stay strong.
Yeah, I think it would be the same every year of do the basic, keep an eye on the basics, right? Asset management, patch management, identity. We see a lot of marketing around, I don't know, identity is the new perimeter. You know what? You still need firewalls. You still, right? It's all that layers still. I think the disruption of generative AI is going to increase next year for sure, and probably subsequent years. I think it's a little bit hard for us to see out that far. But I feel we're just in the early stages of that, and it's going to impact all aspects of life and IT and cyber, right? I know in the UK, one of the celebrities in the UK was completely faked into a financial fraud. That was an advert that was published, I think published on various social media platforms. And it was using generative AI, and they had to come out and say that this is not me. I have no idea what this is about. And they're a famous TV personality. So from that perspective, things that we're used to, right, of from a CISO perspective of teaching employees about social engineering and spotting phishing emails, well, guess what? You're not going to be able to tell the difference. And this is where generative AI is just going to turn a lot of the things that you and I, Tracy, have kind of learned over the last iteration of maybe 10, 15 years. It's going to turn it on its head. And then you throw in quantum computing, which is a little bit behind, right? But that's then going to come along and make the power of traditional computing, kind of seem insignificant. So now you combine those two elements of evolutionary kind of technology, and to be honest, I'm struggling to get my head around some of the consequences, right? Obviously, quantum, we're talking about cryptography and the ability to break the internet and break encryption, but you now combine that with the compute power of quantum with something like generative AI, and what does that really mean? So it's a continues to be an exciting, but a challenging kind of year that we're moving into.
It certainly is. I think we're definitely at kind of that impasse right now in technology where things are going to change exponentially, and we are going to have to keep up. It's something that you can't turn away from AI at this turn. You have to really lean in and figure out how you can leverage it to your advantage.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Carl. This was such a fantastic conversation. Just hearing your insights, it's been invaluable for us to learn from. And we're just extremely excited to partner with you in your new role at Deep Instinct. And we're very excited about the technology and just really continue to drive some great outcomes for our customers together.
No, thank you for the time, Tracy. And, you've been a great partner, and looking forward to much more success in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to me.